Good afternoon, boys and girls. I just wanted to do a mini lesson on science as we were talking about the phases of the moon before school was out of session. And you have in your packet a little book, Let's Learn About Moon Phases. That would be great to read. And I just wanted to share a little bit about those moon phases with our diagram here. I want to remind you that the moon is our closest neighbor, and it revolves around the Earth, and it also rotates as it revolves. But the moon's orbit and rotation are the same, matching, so we see the same side of the moon all the time. The part of the moon, the side we don't see, is called the dark side of the moon. As my diagram shows, different parts of the moon are lit up by the sun as it revolves around the Earth in its orbit. When the sun is shining on the dark side of the moon, we see what's called the new moon. And just a reminder, the moon doesn't give its own light, it is reflecting the sun's light. So you can watch this basically every 28 days or once a month. You can see this process. When we don't see any of the moon, that's called the new moon. And then when we start to see a little bit of the moon reflecting the sun's light, we call that the waning crescent. A few days later, we'll get to the last quarter where you see half of the moon. And a few days later, you'll see the waning gibbous, when you see most of the moon. And of course, when you can see the whole moon, we call that the full moon. And then we start to go the opposite. Now we're going to start seeing less and less of the moon. So now this part is called the waxing part. So we're waxing on, putting a little bit more on of the dark to cover up the moon. So then we see the waxing gibbous, and a few days later, the first quarter, the waxing crescent, and then we're back to the new moon, and the cycle continues about every 28 days. And as we said again, as you see more of the moon, we call that the waning process. And as you see less of it, the waxing process. But remember, the whole moon is always there. It's just because of the way it's traveling around us and the amount of the sun's light that it can reflect. So just a little reminder, I encourage you to do a little more research on your own. You could go to Pebbles Go or other sites to look up some things about the moon and the phases. And don't forget to read the book in your packet. That's all for now.